Alright, today we are in Zurich, Switzerland, and we're gonna have lunch first, but today we're gonna be talking about full frame versus crop sensors. Alright, so let's talk about camera sensors. So basically, camera sensors replicate the look of a 35mm film. And now there are sensors that do exactly this and replicate the full 35mm film look, and these sensors are called full frame sensors. Lenses that go on full frame sensors become exactly what they are. So for example, a 50mm 1.8 becomes a 50mm 1.8 on a full frame sensor. Conversely, there are crop sensors, which are smaller sensors, and because of this smaller sensor, it zooms in about 1.5 times and makes the image look cropped compared to a full frame sensor. So how this would work is if you put a 50mm on a crop sensor, effectively it would become a 75mm lens. Crop sensors are also known as APS-C sensors. Okay, but what's the difference between full frame sensors and crop sensors? Well, for one, full frame sensors, they're bigger sensors, so they're more expensive to manufacture, and they're usually found on higher end camera bodies. These include the Canon 5D Mark IV, the Canon 6D Mark II, the Canon 1DX Mark II, and then on Nikon these include the Nikon D610, the D750, the D850, and the Nikon D5. On Sony it's the A7R III, the A7 III, and the A7S II. So these camera bodies are generally more expensive than cameras with a crop sensor. But that doesn't mean all crop sensor cameras are cheap. There are some professional level ones as well. Okay, we're leaving Switzerland now. We're gonna drive to Munich, and let's talk more about crop sensors versus full frame when we get there. And we are now in Munich. Alright, we are at our hotel now and it looks pretty nice. Anyway, let's continue talking about full frame versus crop. Now, not all crop sensors are necessarily for entry-level cameras. Some of the benefits that crop sensors have over full frame sensors is that it has that extra reach. Now, this can be very useful for sports photography and wildlife photography, so having that extra reach goes a very long way. Literally. Cameras like the Nikon D500 and the Canon 7D Mark II are crop sensor cameras, and they're angled towards professional wildlife and sports photography shooters because they're really robust and they really have quick frames per second in addition to their crop sensor. But how does a crop sensor help in shooting those genres of photography? Well, for one, you're able to have the extra reach without having to crop in. If you're shooting on a full frame, a 300mm lens would be 300mm, and if you would want the equivalent of a crop sensor, you'd have to crop in your image and lose some pixels. But if you're on a crop sensor, you'd get the 450mm length without having to crop or anything. So you get to use all the megapixels of your camera and maybe even crop in further. Alright, take a look at this. Nice view. Alright, how about full frame cameras versus crop sensors? Well, one of the main things that full frame cameras have over crop sensors is that because there's no crop, you don't have to move back to get the same effective focal length as if there were a crop. So basically, because you're moving closer, the depth of field will be less and you'll get more bokeh. And that's one of the reasons I like full frame cameras, because there's better background blur and you don't really have to do any math with the lens selection that you have. So a 50mm will be a 50mm. Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I like full frame cameras. There are other reasons why people choose to shoot on full frame cameras, but that's my main reason. Anyway, time for dinner. Let's go and walk around and look for a place to eat. Alright, I'm gonna show you guys what the difference is between full frame and crop. Well, these photos are gonna be taken on a full frame sensor. I'm gonna show you what it would look like if it were taken on crop side by side. Alright, because it's Sunday today, not a lot of places are open, but Subway is open. Alright, I'm back home, and if you noticed, there's something wrong with this lens. Halfway through today when I got here, I realized that this thing was broken. And now look, if you move it, it jitters like that. I think it's the optical image stabilization that's really broken. But if you zoom it in like this, it's fine. But using my favorite focal length, the 10mm here, it's broken. I mean, like, these things happen. I mean, with the trackpad, it broke. And I mean, it still works, but this one, I mean, it's not broken, but it doesn't really work perfectly. And it's honestly so frustrating. Alright, so as I was saying this, the camera literally died because I think the lens lost connection with the camera. I'm not sure what happened actually. But I was saying that these things, and it lost connection again. And yeah, this is just really frustrating. Let's just zoom this in. I hope it looks okay. Honestly, I hate it when the gear gets in the way of making stuff. And I mean, the gear, and I know that the gear isn't everything. It's just a means to an end. But when the gear makes it difficult to create something, to create what you want to make, and it just becomes a barrier, it's just the most annoying thing ever. And I mean, I wish I could just like not mind this, but it's a pretty big problem. I mean, look at this. This lens is just not really working anymore. Well, at least at 10mm, which is my favorite focal length. So if anyone knows anything about this problem, please let me know, because I am just having so much trouble. If anyone knows anyone at Sony who can help me remedy this, that would be nice, because I still have more than half of this strip, and this is my main vlogging lens, and it's just really frustrating what's happened here. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you guys some test footage of it jittering, and it's just so annoying. Anyway, I don't want to end this video on a sad note. So yeah, I'm happy that I'm here in Munich. It's very exciting. Tomorrow we're going to be hitting up some museums. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this talk about full frame versus crop sensor cameras. Yeah, I'll update you guys what happens to this lens, and if there's any other problems. If you know anyone who can help me remedy this, please let me know. Anyway, see you guys tomorrow.